So this is your words where you're like, I'm an idiot. I'm screwed. I don't know what to do. I'll never figure this out. The negative stuff we say, the negative words have 40 to 70 times the impact of a thought. And so in the gym, I got to a point where I'd be like, I own this weight. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got this. You know, if you've ever watched Ronnie Coleman was a former universe multiple times, and he would yell, he'd be like, lightweight, baby. That's kind of his favorite thing, because he would just kind of program his mind. Well, the same thing's true in business. You know, I've had many times where we were basically screwed, you know, like it wasn't going to work. And instead of saying we're screwed, or instead of saying this isn't going to work, I would say, we got this. We're smart. We have good intentions. Like, we're going to figure this thing out. What questions are we not asking? And you start pouring some positivity in. Tell people, create your future with your future, not your past. Create your future with your future, not your past. In other words, the future vision you have of yourself, the person you were born to be. Create your future with that version versus your past. And when you do that, you start speaking.
Hey, welcome to Networking Star. I am your host, Jeffery Boyle. And here on Networking Star, I have some of the most innovative, interesting, I guess, just compelling entrepreneurs. These are the guys that help us have, be, and do more in life and really expand our vision and really what we think we could become of ourselves. Today, I have with me Justin Prince. Justin is, he's done billions of dollars in his sales efforts. He has opened multiple companies. He's a best-selling author. He speaks all across the world. He's worked in 20 different countries. I could go down this list of all the things that you've done, but Justin, it's just awesome to have you here, man.
Yeah, Jeff, appreciate it, brother. You know, it's funny. It's like our careers have kind of intersected just at different points, but never, had a chance to really sit down and just have a full conversation, So I've been looking forward to it.
It's funny because last week I had the suggestion. It's like, you might know Justin Prince. I'm like, I know Justin Prince. Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm like, why in the world haven't I liked Justin Prince before? But yeah, we've known each other for a while. And I remember we spoke at some of the same things, but I'll skip past our history and I go right into your history because that's why we're here. You really inspire people. You have this big following. You have over 100,000 followers on Instagram. You speak all over the world. But I think that the most interesting and compelling thing that you do is talk about your failures. And so many times people look at you, you're crazy enough to be active in bodybuilding. You try just about anything that you can do, and you're a family guy, but your failures are really compelling. And it actually I think is the basis for who you are today. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a whole, that's a whole podcast episode, but no, I just one clarification. So I'm not a bodybuilder. I did one physique show. I'm a dad trying to fight dad bod for sure. But I just needed to set a goal and one of my kids.
Well, I said you got involved with it. Come on. You got up there. I don't know that I could put on those shorts, man, but you exactly. Did it. It was impressive.
That was one of those ones that you want to set and go make a goal and go keep it. So, my entrepreneurial journey, so when my folks were divorced when I was 12, we moved 13 times in the 7 years through the teenage years. I was the oldest at home with my mom. I was my mom's oldest. Obviously, I saw my dad every other weekend as far as staying at his house. And then, I have no professional background. I was making pizzas and doing construction work. I worked at a mall kiosk selling animated Bible videos. I have no college education. And so my first entrepreneurial adventure was when I was 25, and I just went for it. I just went full tilt, all in. And, left my job and just went for this business. And long story short, the business failed. And when it failed, I was below zero financially, back on credit cards, back on taxes. At one point, I moved my pregnant wife and our now 2 kids into the loft above my wife's parents' garage. And so I had 2 part-time jobs. One I did during the week, one I did during the weekend. The kids sleep in their little closet. My wife and I sleep in this little loft area. Man, you're just like, what am I doing with my life? Just kind of grinding. I started another business at this point. I'm trying to make that one work. And you sometimes wonder to yourself, is it possible? It's possible for others in the world, but is it possible for me? And my guess is some of you listening right now, you can relate to this. You're like, are my dreams, are my goals possible? I know it's possible for others. And one of the things that I teach, I wrote a book called Be the One. And 2 quick concepts about the book that I think are important. One is, It's not become the one, it's be the one. You
Mm-hmm.
already are the one. Success is an identity process, and you'll never outperform the way you see yourself. And so when you realize that you're the one, when you realize that if you take your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and great-grandparents, for the last 12 generations, it was 400 years approximately, and it was 4,094 people from all over the world that came together to create you. Like, your life has value and purpose and meaning. You're the one that they lived for and bled for and cried for and died for. You are the one. Second thing is it's not become, it's be, which means it's a present state, to be you, the best version of yourself, to be the one you were born to be. And one of the ways to do this is to update your identity. And I teach this concept that you're not who you are who you were born to be. You are not what you did, you are what you repeatedly do. And one of the updates of our identity is the update on our identity is failure. So failure, we've been trained, is in essence, failure equals pain. Failure equals, it's basically bad.
Mm-hmm.
Where failure is not a person, it's an event. Failure is not final, it's fertilizer. And your success will grow in the fertilizer of your failure. And so you can convert it from pain to fuel. It's what I call convert the hurt. You take the pain and you convert it. Like the sun, when it hits a solar panel, it converts from like solar energy into like electrical energy. It goes through a conversion process. I tell this story in the book, Jeffrey. I worked with a man years ago. It's just one of the sweetest guys you'd ever meet. Just an absolute powerhouse of a man. His name's Jaime Molina. Now he's a kind, gentle man. He's married to his wife, Ramona. They have 4 beautiful daughters. He works in the financial services industry. He's very devout in his Catholic faith. He actually works with the troubled youth in his community. And Jaime, when he works with the kids, he tells them a story about a man named E9400. E9400 was born in the border town of Texas, El Paso. At age 8, this little boy was introduced to alcohol, started using alcohol regularly. At age 9, this little boy was sexually molested by someone 24 years older than him, became sexually active as a little 9-year-old boy. At 14, he was on hard drugs. At 15, he was a mule for the cartels. At 24, he was convicted of 11 felonies and served multiple years in San Quentin.
Wow.
And Jaime tells these kids, he goes, "What do you think happened to E9400? If we did a polling, what do you guys think happened? Is he on the streets? Is he an alcoholic? Is he on drugs? Is he dead? Is he alive? Is he living his best life? Is he in the cartels? Like, what do you think happened?" Well, one day he says to the kids, he goes, "I got a special guest for you today." And they said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Remember I told you this story about E9400? And the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, that guy at age 8 was on alcohol, at 9 was sexually molested, became active, 14 was on drugs, 15 was in the cartel, a mule for the cartels, 24 was in San Quentin." And he walks out the hall. He goes, "Let me go grab him." And he comes back in, shuts the door, and walks to the front, but it's just Jaime. And the kids are looking around. "Where's E9400? He says, "I am E9400. And E9400 was his prison identification. It was his prison ID when he was in San Quentin. So that was his identity for many years of his life. But remember, you are not who you are who you were born to be. And you are not what you did, you are what you repeatedly do. Jaime was not born to be E9400. He was born to be Jaime Molina, married to Ramona, father to these beautiful daughters, a man building his financial services business, a man devote to his faith, a man that served in his community. That's who he was born to be. And so you have to update this identity that we have of ourselves, including the way that we look at our failures, that failure is ultimately fertilizer, and that our success grows in the fertilizer of failure.
Well, it's interesting. I've had a couple convicts on my podcast, and sometimes the convicts are the most interesting guys, because they've seen, there's failure, there's rock bottom, and then there's being a convict in a federal penitentiary. That's as low as it gets. And to me, it's some of the most inspirational things. Because failure often can ruin you, or it can really propel you. And these guys didn't just fail; they had to live through just really some of the worst things ever. And typically it's these guys who have had, kind of like Jaime you're talking about, who have had no reason that they should ever succeed.
Yeah.
Yet they somehow or another are able to get themselves out of it. So how did that living? It's never fun to live in your in-laws' house, let alone above their garage. But how does that define? Really, it's not so much define you, but propel you to be able to be where you are now.
Yeah. So going back to this concept that success is an identity process, and that you'll never outperform the way you see yourself. So just to illustrate the point, James Clear wrote a book called Atomic Habits. Some of you guys have heard of Atomic Habits.
Good book.
He tells the story about 2 boys, one of which stole the candy. And they said to the first child, did you steal the candy? The boy said, I didn't steal the candy. And they said to the second child, did you steal the candy? And the little boy said, I don't steal. So I didn't steal that particular piece of candy. That's an action. I don't steal is an identity. And one of the identities that I've anchored into myself is that I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter. Like, listen, the Japanese proverb talks about getting knocked down 6 and stand up 7. That's me. And I'm resilient and I'm a fighter, and I'm not going to stay down forever. And so when I was in that loft, I just reminded myself I've been fighting my whole life, and I used to actually literally be a Golden Gloves Junior Olympics fighter back in the day, but I was just like, I'm a fighter, I'm going to fight through this thing. I'm going to get through this. And so when adversity hits me, I had a friend tell me the other day, he goes, man, if I was going through what you're going through, he's like, I would literally go curl up in a ball. He's like, it's just like, and his wife's like, he would go curl up in a ball. And I was just like, that's just not how I'm wired.
Yeah.
I'm wired to fight back and to stand up for myself and to set the record straight and to work hard and to build a comeback story. There's 3 sections to the journey. There's the dream, the struggle, the victory. And they're all equal. So in other words, if you have a big dream, you sign yourself up for a struggle equal to or commensurate to the size of the dream, and then a victory equal to the size of the struggle. And so what happens sometimes when you hit the dream section, the victory section, you made it. Listen, you got to sign yourself up for bigger dreams, and which means bigger struggles and bigger victories. And you kind of keep going through that. And so when you're in the struggle section, you want to take good notes because people will relate more to your struggles than your victories. Sure. But you also want to remind yourself that your story is not the struggle. Your story is how you overcame the struggle. Your story is how you fought through the struggle. The bigger the struggle, the bigger the story. The bigger the struggle, the bigger the applause when you cross the stage, because people say, wow, you accomplished all that and you still did it. Or you went through all that and you still did it. Yeah. And that's why you want to be a fighter and fight through stuff.
And I think that's why, I do know you, but it's been, for a long time since we've even spoken. But, it's really easy to talk about the accolades, $2.5 billion of sales, 20 countries. You go speak to giant coliseums of people. You post something and thousands of people watch it. But to get there, you've been knocked to your knees. And I like what you're talking about. I remember first time that I had a problem with a partner who was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he was trying to intimidate me, in a conversation. And I just handed him a piece of paper, and it's that famous little sketch of a frog holding the bird by the neck as the bird was trying to swallow him. I don't think that was the right thing to give to this particular guy because it just pissed him off more. But at some time, you just have to decide, who are you? Are you going to be knocked to your knees? Are you going to stay down? Or are you going to allow that to really be a life lesson and make sure that you put things into place to not allow yourself to be in that situation? And if you are, it's easier to get up the next time. And so talk to me a little bit about what you're doing now, because I know that you've had just so many different diverse experiences as an entrepreneur. Where are you dedicating yourselves? Because you've had a switch now, and now you're focusing on some new things.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a transition period right now. But I made 2 promises when I was really struggling. I remember I was driving down I-15, heading north. For anyone that's ever been in Salt Lake City, and back on credit cards, back on taxes. This is 15, 16 years ago.
So what's worse, being backed on? Because I've never been backed on taxes, but man, I've been hit by credit cards as a new entrepreneur. What's worse, the taxes or the credit cards?
Taxes for sure. The worst creditor in the world is the government.
Yeah.
Because the government can just reach in and take your stuff, and then also their interest rates are just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
So I was about ready to give up. I just had tears rolling down my face, and I made 2 promises to myself, and I really made 2 promises to God. And the first promise I made is, if I ever succeed, if I ever become successful, I promised I wouldn't forget what it felt like to struggle.
Yeah.
Like the swallow in your throat, when you're
like when E.T. dies and your throat is all red and hot.
Yeah. Listen, anyone that's going through it right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the financial pressure never leaves, or just the weight on your shoulders of like, whew, can I get through all this stuff? The second thing I promised is, if I ever became successful, I would do everything I could to help other people to achieve their dreams and achieve their goals. And I would wear myself out trying to help other people. And so, for me, I'm not done, fulfilling promise number 2, which is writing books, hit bestseller with my book Be the One, whether it's writing books, whether it's, building businesses, it's serving people, speaking on stages. I spoke this last weekend in Dallas for a group. And so just trying to help that next person know that it's possible for them to create, design, and live an unforgettable life. Yeah.
I was at law school and I was trying to run a business. I went to law school in Northern Idaho at University of Idaho, but my business was in Boise. So it's about a 5-hour drive. And right into my second year of law school, it's not smart to try to run a business while going to law school, especially when it's not in the same city. And I remember we were behind in the credit card. The credit card companies are very persistent in trying to get their money. And I just remember the things that they would say. And one of them found out what religion I was and was attacking my religion, attacking me for not living my religion. Anything that they can do to try to make you feel obligated. Man, if I had the cash, I'd pay it. You don't go from an 800 credit score to a 400 credit score out of choice. You go out of just simply not being able to do it. But you have a lot of those credit card collection agencies calling you. Maybe they're not collection, maybe there's something different, but there's a lot of voices in your head telling you that you suck. So what do you tell these guys? Because you've been through it, and you're right. Your bad experiences are really what are propelling other people. How do you help that person who's hearing these voices externally, but more importantly, internally, that are really beating them down?
Yeah. I mean, look, again, this goes back a lot to this identity. You start anchoring down, an identity. A lot of us haven't updated it since we were 7, and what people told us when we were 7 or when we were 17. Or when we were 27, someone told us something, or I went through that event or that failure, whether it was a bankruptcy or a divorce or these really hard times, or an addiction issue or whatever the case might be. And so you want to update that. But, part of it is the words that you say to yourself. So I'll give you an example. When I was 15 years old, I first learned to formally learn to lift weights. My dad hired a trainer for me. And I remember we went to the gym, and any of you guys remember going to the gym for the first time? You feel super out of place. Like everyone else seems to know what they're doing. You don't feel like you know what you're doing. So everyone else seems to have, the right clothes on. You feel like you're kind of frumpy. Everyone else seems to know the perfect form. You're not sure how to use anything. So I see this guy come walking across the gym. He's 300 pounds and he's 6'2" and he's 10% body fat. So to give you guys an idea what that looks like, that's 22-inch arms, humongous block out the sun shoulders, small waist, huge legs. The guy's name is DeMarco. He's got a bandana on. He's got an earring. He's got tattoo sleeves up both sides. He's got tattoos on his neck. And I tease my neck tattoo friends. Someone's got a neck tattoo. You might want to check yourself, because they might break you in half. So this dude's he's just jacked. He's so jacked. So he walks over to my dad, shakes my dad's hand, and he says to me, he goes, "Stand up." And I was like, "Yes, sir." I'm kind of, shoulders front back. He goes, "Get your shoulders back." I said, "Yes, sir. I'm 15. Shake his hand. And he said, "Your dad wants me to train you. I have 3 rules." He said, "Rule number 1, never be late." I said, "Yes, sir." I'm just so scared of this guy. He said, "It's disrespectful to your dad, disrespectful to me, never be late." He says, "Rule number 2." He said, "I don't want you to come to the gym with rat breath." I thought, what is rat breath? What are you talking about? He goes, "Yeah, I don't want to be spotting you. And you're like, and you have this bad breath." He goes, "You're 15. He goes, brush your teeth, use some Tic Tacs, get some gum." And I was like, that's probably pretty good advice in the gym and out of the gym. I was like, yeah, I like this guy already. And then he said, "Rule number 3. He said, "I never want to hear you say that you can't do something." He says, "You have a conscious and a subconscious mind." He says, "Your conscious mind will believe whatever you tell it." And he said, "So I never want to hear you say you can't do something." So he said, "Even if I put weights on that you think you can't lift, don't say it out loud, and then we'll lift the weight." So I remember a couple of weeks into it, he would stack a bunch of weights on. And I remember thinking to myself, not saying it, but thinking, there's no chance I can lift this weight. But out of respect for him and fear for him, and because of this promise I made to him, I didn't say it out loud, and I lifted the weight. And I share that with you to say, Christine Porath from both Georgetown and Harvard has done research that says that your words, so what she calls neutral or positive words, are 10 times more impactful than a thought. So in other words, if you say, "I got this," or "I'm strong," or "I'm a fighter," or "I can make it through," that has 10 times the impact of the thought. She says your negative words, so this is your words where you're like, "I'm an idiot. I'm screwed. I don't know what to do. I'll never figure this out." The negative stuff we say, the negative words have 40 to 70 times the impact of a thought. And so in the gym, I got to a point where I'd be like, I own this weight. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got this. You know, if you've ever watched Ronnie Coleman was a former universe multiple times, and he would yell, he'd be like, lightweight, baby. That's kind of his famous thing, because he would just kind of program his mind. Well, the same thing's true in business. You know, I've had many times where we were basically screwed, you know, like it wasn't going to work. And instead of saying we're screwed, or instead of saying this isn't going to work, I would say, we got this. We're smart. We have good intentions. Like, we're going to figure this thing out. What questions are we not asking? And you start pouring some positivity and tell people, create your future with your future, not your past. Create your future with your future, not your past. In other words, the future vision you have of yourself, the person you were born to be, create your future with that version versus your past. And when you do that, you start speaking some life into your future by saying, you know what, I've got what it takes. I can make this thing happen. And so you might have the negative thoughts. We all do, unless you're like super programmed and you're just a personal development machine. You never think negative. Most of us have negative stuff come into our mind. Well, you can't always control that. You can always control the words that come out. And you can program yourself to say, you know what, I'm gonna avoid the negative words. I'm gonna speak some life into my future.
My dad was a good friend with Stephen Covey when they were both alive. They both passed, and my dad asked him one time. You know, they knew each other when they were in their 20s, and later on, obviously, man, Covey became known as one of the great thinkers and motivational speakers, and he was never a rah-rah guy. He was very cerebral. And my dad asked him one time, he's like, man, what happens when you get down? And he goes, I go into the closet and read my own book, you know, and it's the kind of thing you think, well, how could that guy who was just always positive? He was always positive. When I first met him, I was 21 years old, and he stood right in front of me. It was uncomfortably close. And it felt like he was looking into my soul, trying to find the deep crevice of doubt to be able to rip him out of me. And I thought that was a pretty interesting thing, which is he has to sometimes go read his own books to make sure that he's got himself in check. There's nobody that doesn't have self-doubts. There's nobody that's not going through some difficult times. And I think that that's why having a mentor is so important. You talked about your buddy there. Talk a little bit about some of the mentors that you've had and why they've been so impactful. You know, you talked about your 15-year-old when you were 15, but what are some of the most impactful mentors you had? Yeah.
So I teach a rule. I talk about amplifying your associations in the book. And there's an old, ism or saying that you'll be like the 5 people you surround yourself with most. I think the concept of that is accurate. The challenge with that is you can't always control. You're not always hanging out with 5 amazing people. And you can't always, it's almost impractical to hang out with 5 amazing people all the time. And so it's what I teach is what I call the rule of 33, which is 33% of your time with people, in this case, above you. And when I say above you, you aspire to be like them. Maybe they earn the money you aspire to earn, or maybe they have the marriage you aspire to have, or the fitness you aspire to have, or the spiritual connection you aspire to have. But man, they're just playing the game at a bigger level than you are. And you can learn from them. You can ask them questions. They make you think bigger. And I've had so many of those mentors. Aristotle says, if I've seen further, it's only by standing on the shoulders of giants. I've had so many of those. John Maxwell wrote the foreword for my book. John's been one of them. You know, help me think bigger, see bigger, be bigger, do bigger.
He's a pretty good mentor. That's pretty cool. You got a guy like that in your life. I mean, there's no one alive that can think of that would have a bigger impact on more people the way that he has. That's a big statement, but man, he's had a huge impact on people.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, he's. It's funny if you look at him. No one's written more leadership content in the history of mankind than John Maxwell. I mean, that's pretty amazing to think. My son's actually doing a 2-year mission work over in West Virginia. He's in Charleston, West Virginia. It's surrounding areas. So anyway, he meets this lady, and she says to him as he's talking, she goes, you remind me. Do you want to know who you remind me of? And he goes, who's that? And she goes, I don't know if you're going to know him, but his name is John Maxwell. And which was obviously it's a huge compliment, right? Huge. But my son knows John, and I tell some stories in the book about John and my son, and some really sweet connections. I was on his podcast the other day with Mark Cole, CEO of the Maxwell organization. And we just talked about Isaac for probably 30 minutes of the podcast. So he said to her, John had spoken in her community and she was like his escort when he was there. She picked him at the airport, and she made sure he had everything he needed. And anyway, so we just sent her one of my books, and she just, it was a really sweet kind of connection, because Isaac's story of he and John are in the book, so it was a really sweet connection. So going back to 33, is 33% of the time of people that are basically at your size, right? So you have 2 kids, they have 2 kids. You're making 74,000 a year, they're making 79. Like you're just living the life similar. So you can hold each other accountable. You can root for each other. You can cry together, pray together. You can work together. You can say, hey, look, I've masterminded with friends of mine where we were all about the same size. We were all kind of pulling each other forward. Maybe I had more experience here, but they had more experience there, and I could lend on them. They could lean on me. And it really was powerful, moving us all forward. And then lastly, 33% of people, 33% of your time are people that are chasing you, right? Maybe you're ahead of them on the journey, and not ahead of them as your value as a human, but ahead of them, maybe you make more than they make. Maybe you're more spiritually connected they are. Maybe you're been married longer than they have. Like you can mentor and guide and coach them, because when you teach, you internalize. When you internalize, you own. The content becomes yours. And a lot of times that's why Covey wanted to go back and reread his own books, is because you remind yourself, oh, yeah. I remind myself my best self. I got to show up as the person I was born to be, not let myself get, into these negative thought patterns. So in doing that, I've been able to surround myself with some people that absolutely changed my whole life, pulled me up. I've been able to network and to build accountability and pull insights from people basically my size. And then I've also been able to mentor and coach people that are on their way up. And that's helped me. It's hopefully helped them, but it's helped me, to be a better person as I'm able to mentor them. So that's kind of how I teach and how I think about the rule.
Well, it's a pretty good one, because it's interesting in a direct sales company that I was in. I said this all the time, that if you have a mentor, you're 500% more likely to succeed. And then if you are a mentor, you're 600% more likely to succeed. And I was in an event in England. I heard the guy on stage saying that, and he was basically owning it. And I thought, you don't even know where that came from, buddy. That came from a Sun Microsystems study in the early 90s. It was like Hollencheck Gartner, that they showed that if you mentor other people, you're 6x more likely to succeed. And so your rule of 33s is pretty cool, because one, they set it up and they saw within Sun Microsystems, the company, that the parts that were succeeding were the ones that had mentor relationships. And so that's pretty good way to explain it, rather than just the 5. And I think the one who made that famous was, oh goodness, I can't remember his name right now. He was so famous. The funny guy from Texas that was such a good speaker. He was always saying that you got to surround yourself with the 5 top people. But
Well,
Zig Ziglar. Thank you. I don't know how can you forget the name Zig Ziglar, but you're right. You are better off surrounding yourself also with the people that you're picking up, and studies actually prove that. Yep. Justin, I'll let you finish it off and just kind of explain just a little bit about, really talk to your 25-year-old self. You're not 25 anymore, but talk to that 25-year-old self, and because there's a lot of people out there that need to hear what you're about to say. How do you overcome just being kicked in the back and being kicked to your knees? How do you overcome that and then get back to where you want to be?
Yeah. So first of all, I love that. I'm like taking notes, dude, as we're having this. So I'm going to go back. I love all that stuff. I love being around people that you're learning from and taking notes from. I'll apply all that stuff. So, I think what I would tell my 25-year-old self is it's going to be harder than you think. It's going to take longer than you think. It's going to be more challenging than you think. And it's going to be more worth it than you think. And I would just tell him, get back up and go again, get back up and go again, get back up and go again. You just anchor down in this idea that I will persist until I succeed, And so most people persist until it's hard. Most people persist until the customer quits, until the team walks away. Most people persist until they get kicked in the mouth, they get betrayed. You want to persist until you succeed. And that's what I would remind that 25-year-old self, is just go, your success is inevitable if you'll persist until you succeed.
Well, I don't know how I improve on that at the end of it. Justin, thanks so much for being with me.
Yeah, brother, honored to be here with you, man. Keep up the great work.
All right, man. I hope we go a little bit more frequently than every maybe 6 or 7 years of saying hi. So good to have you on here.
Let's do it.